Erin Perini is here also with us, Deputy Managing Editor for Red State. Kira Davis is back. And ladies, we're talking about Ohio and Florida. And Erin, we can't even call these states swing states anymore, can we?
Well, every state can get a little wonky, so I don't want Republicans to get too enthused, but we should absolutely take what we've learned from Ohio and Florida and how far they have moved to the right, how much more conservative and Republican their voting blocs have become, and start to implement that across the country. And to Logan's point, I think that hits the nail right on the head, which is to say, these are governors, these are House Senate races and House Assembly races that had great policy stories to tell about economic success, about people moving in, about jobs, about freedom, about opportunity, and using those policies to be able to tell a story about what could be done with more time, with another election victory. And those Republican policies and success from them are why you have seen Ohio become so much redder and why you have seen Florida just absolutely crush in Republican polling when it comes to Election Day.
And Kira, we heard this in Logan's report there, but Republicans say the election integrity issue is a big reason why they were proactive about this, and this is one of the reasons why they say these states are now redder than ever.
There is absolutely no doubt that when elections are observed and tightened up, they generally tend to swing away from Democrats, which is why Democrats love the mail-in ballots and they love lengthening the process as long as possible. So I do agree. I agree with Erin. It's a combination of things. It is a combination of being a little more hip to what's going on at the polls and making sure that the Republican Party is aware. It's also these candidates running on policy, but also let's not slight the fact that many Californians and many people from blue states escaped. And they escaped to Florida, states like Florida, and yes, states like Ohio, especially in the Midwest. So there are a lot of red voters that moved from New York to Florida and from California to Florida. And that is also shifting the culture there. But I do think that the Republican Party can take a good lesson from this to understand that there are messaging issues in the party and there are policies that are happening across the country, Republican policies, red policies that are helping, but the Republican Party isn't really on top of that. And let's also not forget that they pumped $30 million into J.D. Vance's campaign in Ohio. Money does make a difference, and so Republicans need to be willing to spend it to win.
Yeah, we saw that, too, because Democrats outspent Republicans by like 3-1 on a lot of these Senate races, and money does matter sometimes. Aaron, I also wanted to ask you real quickly about New York. I know that's your home state, and anyone who follows you on social media knows how much you love the Buffalo Bills. But, Kira was talking about some of the messaging and the... Good point. That's true. Facts matter. But it is... telling too, the way we saw the red waves in some of those congressional districts, the messaging can work in a blue state. Tell us why you think some of those congressional districts were burning red hot on election night.
There are a number of reasons, but crime, crime, crime was the top message in New York. Listen, I grew up in Rochester, and I had a friend from high school who is apolitical reach out to me and tell me that he's been working in a jewelry store since high school. He had been robbed at that jewelry store and hit by a car when he went out to confront the robbers. And he said, I don't feel safe anymore in New York. I don't know what this is. So you saw congressional candidates use stories like that and everyday stories about what was happening because of the bail reform laws in New York. And they got out and vote. That message resonated on Long Island, a clean sweep, and in central New York. New Yorkers want to be safe. It's a great state. And Kathy Hochul and Democrats and Letitia James have failed miserably. But being able to take pro-victim, anti-crime Republicans to D.C. to help defend New York and make sure that their citizens are safer is great for the Empire State.
Yeah, the question is now is when these guys get into office, can they govern in a way that it doesn't flip back to blue? And again, that's the challenge that they're facing. And Kira, talk about that a little bit as well, because there is the issue of campaigning and winning these elections, but also these folks still have to govern and deliver for their constituents.
Sure, but let's look at Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. Same thing, right? He wasn't maybe not the top pick, took advantage of a very bad misstep by his opponent, squeaked in there, but now he's governing in a very conservative way, and it's starting to spread out across his state, politically speaking. So at the end of the day, I think Republicans just need to stick to the platform. Conservative platforms work. Conservative platforms are good for America. They're good for our communities. I'm a conservative because I think that these principles lead to the best possible outcomes, particularly for Black Americans. As a Black American myself, that means something to me. So we don't need to change the platform, but we do need to get the messaging out. And I'm just really flabbergasted, and I think I'm still kind of exhausted from my own race here in California. We're counting for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm still flabbergasted that Republican leadership has really not been able to grasp this idea of messaging, because the platform is there. Our principles work. I mean, they work literally, not just figuratively and just not just to sound good. We see the metrics when they're applied. And so to me, this is really an issue of messaging and energy. And I think, again, you look at a guy like J.D. Vance, it was a combination of things, that money, but also he had that energy and that passion. So we need to keep replicating that.
Kira, you're right. And to that point, part of the issue here are the pollsters that a lot of these Republican candidates were using. There's a lot of money that's put into getting data, getting good data so that we can target our message and know where to spend money on ads. We spend a lot of money as Republicans trying to tell our message on TV, but not on infrastructure, not on the ground game, not talking to voters where they are. And a lot of that falls on really bad Republican pollsters who gave a lot of candidates a lot of bad information. And the time is now for the Republican Party to stand up and say, if you gave your candidate bad information, you shouldn't get hired on other campaigns.
Yeah, that's an important factor, too, is data matters. And we talk about that on our show every Tuesday with Mark Halpern, how important this stuff is in reaching those voters. It's not just the message. You have to get out there. And, Aaron, also a very important point, you got to get face-to-face with the voters. If you're a Republican, at least. It works for Democrats to hang out in the basement and not do these things. But, you know, Republican voters, if they're going to be going to if they're going to go to the polls, they still want to feel like the candidates are working to earn their vote, right?
Yeah, my opponent in my school board race is beating me right now by 500 votes, and he did not campaign once. He has not left his basement once. What do you do?
Well, and I think this goes back to something Aaron was saying earlier, too, about they go on TikTok where their voters are, and they have kind of figured this out, I think, better than Republicans, the digital reach game. And that's another thing, Aaron, don't you think Republicans need to work on?
Absolutely. We have to meet voters where they are. Now, I will remain very wary of TikTok because I don't want to give the Chinese more information about me, right?
Yes.
I have an iPhone. They probably have enough as it is. But to the point of being able to talk to influencers, talk to people who get to these voters, and they feel like it's an everyday conversation, that's when messaging works its best, is when it's the most authentic. If you're scrolling, and to Kira's point in the last segment about kind of the indoctrination that happens at school, we have to meet voters where they are. If it's on your cell phone, on TikTok or another app, yes, let's engage, because we do have conservative commentators. I'm not one on TikTok, but there are some that are out there that are willing to engage. Let's bring that youth vote in. Let's talk to these people and use them as part of the infrastructure of a party that, to Kira's point, again, has a great policy message. Let's run on it.
John McGorry, who does our research for us, this is something we were talking about, too, which is just a subtle difference. But when you talk about the fundraising advantages that Democrats have over Republicans with the small dollars, you know, Republicans primarily, they ask you to donate with a credit card if you're going to do it online. But Democrats, a lot more, like ActBlue, for example, it has Venmo and PayPal. And I'm not endorsing those payment products, but they have different ways. And they seem to be a little bit more advanced and sophisticated, giving their voters more options on how to donate and things like that. And we'll see if Republicans can catch up. But we'll leave it there, ladies. Great conversation. I love it when we mix it up like that. Don't wait for my questions. You can hop right in anytime, too, just like you did, Aaron. I love that. Great to see you, Aaron Perini and Kira Davis, ladies. And Kira, keep us posted on your school board race and how long it takes to count.
Don't hold your breath, though, you guys. It's crazy.
It's razor thin. I was checking it.
I'm sorry, John. I feel good, though, but it's just going to take a few weeks.
I was checking out the results, and I mean, it's an important race. I don't want to downplay it, but it's not like it's not the whole state of Arizona either that they have to count for your race. And you wonder why it's going to take days to count a school board race in Orange County, California. Wow. All right. Great to see you, Kira Davis and Aaron Perini. Thanks so much.